Now, the overnight news on Michael Rogers was good. No broken bones after his fall, and he's still in the race. So 177 riders at the start in Barcelona this morning. 3 casualties in 6 days, being pretty low by Tour first week standards. Spectacular scenery on the way out of Barcelona, heading towards Andorra. And spectacular weather too after yesterday's rain. Christophe Riblon on the AG2R team instigated the day's escape. 8 men went with him, but he was leading over the early climbs, and by the time he hit the top of the Col de Serra Seca, he was the leader of the King of the Mountains competition on the road. The road itself, meanwhile, was getting increasingly difficult to see, covered as it was with spectators. By the time the peloton hit the upper slopes of the Serra Seca 12 minutes later, you couldn't see where the race ended and the crowd began. Inevitably, it led to a bottleneck and a short wait before the back markers could actually get over and start their descent. On the descent, Fabian Cancellara punctured, which was bad news for him, but meant that we got treated to a masterclass in descending as the yellow jersey set off at high speed in pursuit of the main field.
But he really is a phenomenal bike, and look at the way it goes round those corners. He goes right into the apex, puts his leg out a fraction. That's just to distribute the centre of gravity, to make himself just that little bit more solid.
Well, Fabian Cancellara did eventually catch the main field, but the main field has not caught the 9-man breakaway. Christophe Riblon, his AG2R teammate Rinaldo Nocentini, Jose Gutierrez of Kestepan, Egoy Martinez of Euskaltel, Alexander Kuczynski of Liquigas, Christophe Kern of Cofidis, Jérôme Pinault of Quickstep, Bryce Fayeur of Agritubel and Johannes Fröhlinger of Milram are still out front, heading towards Andorra and the final climb of the day.
Well, here they come, the 9 leaders, 11 minutes 43 seconds ahead of the red light at the Andorra frontier, but they won't be stopping now. All of the officials of the gendarmerie and the police of Andorra, and indeed the Spanish police, seeing the Tour de France continue on in Europe. And these 9 riders have now got 37 kilometres to go. One of them, I'm pretty sure, will win today.
Well, they've still got a very fine advantage of 11 minutes and 43 seconds over the front end of the main field, and still nobody's really turned up the hammer a lot. They've kept the distance at a reasonable gap. They know it's very dangerous to allow a group like this get a massive advantage on the first mountain stage, because we've seen in the past riders like Thomas Voeckler has got into a breakaway and kept the yellow jersey for many, many days. They won't conserve a huge portion of that 11:43, and I'm sure they'll lose at least half of it over the next 20 kilometres.
I think as soon as the climb of Arcoli starts, they'll attack each other, and the climbers will try to go clear of the rest and split them all asunder. Very difficult to know if they start picking them up just how many will be left at the front. This is the Cofidis rider, Christophe Kern, in his first Tour de France.
Yes, he's just getting a little bit of work there from his team manager, Londo Lorzela, and he's explaining to him just how the race is going to unfold, what the gradient is like over the next few kilometres. Having crossed the border there, they're going to meander away up to Andorra la Vieja, and that's going to take them a good 10 kilometres. But now you can see that the different speed that these riders are adopting. The road now is going to climb up pretty much all of the way. There is no flat left in today's stage. They climb for the next 16 kilometres to get through the town. Then another 10 kilometres it starts to tip up a fraction more, and then the final 10 kilometres are run off at an average of about 7% gradient. Pretty much starting to kick up from here, Phil, all the way on the running down towards the finish. Looking at the main field, it almost looks as if they've shut off before they get to Andorra.
Tom Bonen sitting at the back of the peloton. He won't be liking what's coming, and he won't be worrying about it either. So he's just dropped back to the end, straightening out his Belgian National Road Race Champions jersey. Title he won for the first time a week ago, or 2 weeks ago on Sunday it will be. First time he's won that. Lamprey, a couple of riders sitting there at the back, but I'm pleased to see that one of them is not Furlan. So I hope he's not behind, but there's every chance he's never got back. I hope he's in the pack.
Well, he should have taken the risk, and I think I saw him taking 1 or 2 risks on the descent, and fingers crossed that he got himself back into the pack with a chance of surviving for another day. This is a big armada at the front of Team Astana. They're trying to figure out whether this man is going to be their leader this afternoon. or whether it's going to be Alberto Contador. And just thinking about what Johan Brunel had to say about this climb not being quite that difficult, I think that Armstrong will probably stay in contact with Alberto Contador on the climb today. But the question is, can the overall leader, Fabian Cancellara, hang tough and keep the lead for one more day?
That's what they'll watch, I think.
I tend to think not.
That's the key to the whole day. If Cancellara cracks and slips, they're going to hit the hammer. Then can Lance Armstrong keep up indeed with Alberto Contador? That's when it'll all get very, very interesting. This is Christoph Kern here. He's gone back to the... Is he doing... No, back to this. Is the mobile doctor. You see the surgery is back behind the race in the sports car. And these are the general practitioners who are put on the motorbikes to speak to anybody who needs anything. And it looks as though Christoph Kern has a little bit of a tummy problem here. He's taking some sort of a tablet to try and get him over it.
This is something that can happen on any day on the Tour because of the large volumes of water and liquids the riders have to take in, especially in these hot climatic conditions.
Well, this is the race radio. Garmin prefer to wear their receivers on the top of their helmets. And this is being worn on the... I can't see his number properly. I can't see his face. Is it Zabriskie?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. A little bit difficult to catch Dave, side face there. But there he is, Dave Zabriskie, the good time trialist. But he's not a bad hill climber, actually, Paul. We've seen him do some very, very good mountain climbs.
A couple of years ago in the Giro d'Italia, he was well up in the overall classification because of his ability to stay in contact over the big mountain passes. Here we're still looking at a main field which is not under serious pressure. There's no main chase going on, and I'm waiting to see just how these guys are going to handle the climb. They've got that leading group of 9 riders pegged at around about 11.5 minutes, but if they're thinking of trying to battle out for the stage glory, they really need to start reeling that advantage back.
Stage glory, I think, is going up the road today. One of those 9 riders has read it right. But who's the next yellow jersey? If they finish from the pack here more than 3 minutes 13 seconds behind Nocentini, well, the yellow jersey will go up front as well today.
So Armstrong in the black helmet, moving up towards the front end of the main field. He's not really very often left the top 15 to 20 places in the Tour de France this year since it left Monaco, and that was his habit between 1999 and 2005 when he was the undefeated champion of the Tour de France. Won on 7 occasions, and that is a record which I think not very many people are likely to beat. It's going to stand for a long time, although I did say that when Miguel Indurain won the Tour de France 5 times in a row that nobody else would equal that feat. Well, Lance Armstrong equaled that feat and bettered it by 2 more. And now here he is back at the Tour de France 4 years after his retirement in 2005, and today he's in with a very, very good chance of getting himself the leader's yellow jersey. It all depends on how Fabian Cancellara handles the final climb of the day. The big man who's been in the yellow jersey since he won the opening time trial in Monaco has got to try and defend on the slopes of this very difficult ascent up to the ski resort in Arcalís. This is the leading group now. They're just getting into the outskirts of the capital of Andorra, and this is the town of Andorra la Vieille. It's the parish and capital of the country of Andorra, which is one of the smallest states in Europe and measures just 467 square kilometers. And its origins go back to the reign of Charlemagne back in 742 and to 814. And it's situated just between Spain and France. It's got 63 kilometers of borders with Spain and 56 kilometers of borders with France. And over the years it has turned itself into a very famous ski resort. It's Gutierrez on the front, Jérôme Pinault in the white and blue shorts, Egoy Martinez in the orange. The other rider on the far side there is Ronaldo Nocentini. And he's the rider who has the most to gain from this. If he can keep himself about 4 minutes in front of the main pack by the end of the day, he could be the new yellow jersey at the end of today's stage. And if he was to do that, if he was to hang on to the yellow jersey, he would be the first Italian to wear the yellow jersey since it was worn by a certain Alberto Elli way back in the year 2000. It's a little bit of pain at the back here. This is Alain Perez of Euskaltel Euskadi. Oscar Freire, I don't think he'll be in too much pain. He was a man who finished second on the stage yesterday, and he's a man who knows exactly how to get himself to the finish on these individual stages where the sprinters are damned to the back of the pack. 3 times a world champion. You can see the rainbow-coloured bands on his arm there. That's only a rider who's been the world road race champion formerly is allowed to wear those bands on his shirt. Moving up the outside. Wants to start this climb at the front. He so much wanted to win yesterday on the Spanish roads into Barcelona. Was just outpowered in the last 50 meters by the big man from Norway, Thor Hushovd.
It looks like Oscar Freire here. Somebody's told him to go to the front and ask him to slow down. He's gone straight from the back and he's moving steady, eh?
Well, Oscar Freire won't be too concerned about a victory on today's stage. He just wants to start the climb at the front end of the main field as we look down this magical valley here. Look at the roads that zigzag away from the valley floor.
That is not the Arcalys, so don't panic yet, folks.
And it's not Alpe d'Huez either.
No, it certainly looks like it, but these are beautiful roads, of course. If you're not watching the Tour de France, we've seen lots of cyclists, a lot of American cyclists, a lot of South African and Australian riders have ridden up the Arcalys this morning, and they've come up, and I must say, one or two have looked a little bit red-faced when they've got up here. But there are so many abound around here that you can have a great time when the Tour's moved on.
Well, the main field now, Phil, have pretty much left the small town of La Soeur d'Urgell just behind them, and that's where the whitewater canoe and kayak was at the Olympic Games back in 1992. In fact, an American by the name of Joe Jacoby got himself a very fine performance there and a gold medal. And in fact, he so much enjoyed his performances there that he named his daughter after the town, Sir Jane, and she's a great Lance Armstrong fan.
Well, maybe getting a result for her today, but the breakaways include, by the way, a new name on the books, which is Bryce Feliu. We talked about Roman Feliu. He was up in the hunt again yesterday. He's had a third already. He's a very good sprinter, but his younger brother Bryce is in his first Tour de France. He's 8 minutes back at the moment overall, which is not a lot for a young rider. It's his first Tour, and he's in the breakaway. I wonder if he can climb.
Well, he's a sprinter pretty much like his brother, so I think he will be finding the final climb of the day just a little bit difficult. We're not too far away from the next sprint point, but the sprint points are not what this final part of the race is all about. It's all about the climbing. Bryce Feliu there on the far side, and the pale blue is Jérôme Simon, and the main field now heading into the Principality of Andorra. And the official gap, although it's being indicated there at 11:14, it's actually down to 11 minutes, the leading group of 9 over the main field. And we're now starting to get into the little part of the course where it starts to get just that little bit more difficult. And just out of interest, way back in the 18th century here, they actually started growing tobacco, which had been brought across from South America. So everybody now is in Andorra, and very shortly we'll start the climb up towards the ski resort. And the final climb of the day is a long 10-kilometer climb with an average gradient of 7%, although there's a couple of points, Phil, kick up to 9%. And that's the point where I think the climbers will start to really turn up the pressure. And right as we speak, it looks as if all of a sudden the nod has gone down to Team Astana to put on the pressure.
Well, they know now that the hill is coming. They're in the Andorran territory. They've recce'd on and they've seen this hill. They know what's to come. The leaders, as you can see, are getting down into Andorra now, and this is where the roads become quite narrow. There's a sprint in Andorra, which leaves them 28 kilometres to race after they go through the sprint. They have been fighting out every euro along the way today by the sprints or mountains. Reblon could well be in the jersey tonight if this all stays away, because if he wins, he gets maximum points. In these streets of Andorra now, we've got 9 riders with a massive lead still. It's hardly coming down. It is coming down a bit quicker. 10 minutes, 49 seconds for the 9 leaders. 29 to go. 1 kilometre or so to the sprint for the 800 euros. There's one more sprint after that at 207 kilometres covered, 16 from the finish. And then we start the climb up to the line.
Well, they're putting the hammer on now, Phil, at the front end of the main field, because finally, for the first time in the last hour or so, the time gap is starting to come down. But will it come down quick enough for Lance Armstrong to have a chance at getting the yellow jersey, or will it slip across to somebody else? Matty Lloyd on the far side there. You can see him with the green and gold bands on his jersey, former Australian national champion. He is riding at the front for one reason only, and that's to look after Cadel Evans, who is right in there as well, and he is looking today to try and make amends for what has been a very difficult start to the Tour for him this year.
And I feel he's sitting on good form. It's not been anything like the start he made last year, of course. But Cadel has been guided through to the front here to get a good look at the approach to the Arcolis. It is a good road, it's excellent surface and quite wide for the riders. It does kick at times, Paul, around one bend when we came round this morning in the car. I would have thought it was more 25% than what they're saying on the map.
Well, that in the corners, it's always the worst part of a climb, but these riders, when they're going around those very steep corners, they take the wide loop around the corner to try and keep on the smoothest gradient. But yes, in some of those corners they were quite scary, and on a couple of occasions I actually had to drop it into second gear.
Good heavens, and that was in a car. Right, this is Christoph Kern. Now, is that the sprint point? No, that's not the banner for the sprint, is it? No, it's in the distance.
Yes, this is the sprint point in Andorra la Vella, and the capital of Andorra here was actually founded way back in 1278, and it earns its name as we go through the sprint. For there from Vella is the Catalan name for town. So that was straight through that sprint point there. There's the main field, and they're all now in the Principality. As we can see, it's still Team Astana at the front, tapping out the tempo. This is the champion of Italy in his jersey, which has not been approved by the Italian Federation, Pippo Pozzato. Confirmation of the result at the sprinter, Christoph Kern getting the points and the money there ahead of Egoy Martinez and Jérôme Pinault. Pozzato, I don't think will be too concerned about the stage this afternoon. It's just a little bit too difficult for him. He tried to get himself a victory yesterday. He attacked inside of the last 500 meters after David Miller had been caught. And as you can see, the Andorrans have turned out in their numbers here to witness and encourage the Tour de France through their Principality. So the gap has come down to 10:20, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult. And now we'll start to see who are the weak men in this group of 9.
10:20. It is coming down rather quickly now, so there is quite a reaction for that. I can't believe they'll close 10 minutes, but I think now 2 races, one for the win and the in battle to crack the boys, the big favourites in the chase pack.
Most certainly that's what's going to happen. There's going to be, as you say, 2 battles here, Phil. The battle for the success at the group, on the group of 9. But more importantly, I think it's the battle for the yellow jersey behind, and there will be big attacks to try and see which of the overall contenders have been hiding their form over the first few days of this tour, hiding in the main field on the flat stages. And we'll get a chance to see. The biggest question that I would like to have answered is, how is Lance Armstrong when it comes to these big, long climbs? He's been away from these big, long climbs for 4 years. Yes, he came to the Giro d'Italia, but I think in the climbs of the Giro d'Italia, he rode well within himself. He didn't want to push himself too hard because he knew he was coming back from that very nasty injury when he broke his collarbone.
Well, it doesn't seem 10 minutes since we saw the sprint, Paul, but these boys are coming through at the moment. And it is Lance in the black helmet there, pushing on. They're trying to now defend their lead position rather than just sit up there, stop anybody creeping up on them. That's the important thing. Cadel Evans' team, or the riders in the red jerseys, doing their best to bring Cadel back into the action here. And that's big Johan van Summeren who's setting the horse, setting the pace. Such a strong workhorse, he really is. This is Andorra now. Normally it's a hustle-bustle capital here of the Principality of Andorra. All the cars have been pushed down the side turnings. Totally closed now by the whole peloton in the race.
It's regarded, Andorra la Vella, by the way, as the town in Europe at an altitude of 1,029 meters. But although it's got its origins going back to medieval times, it's certainly now becoming pretty much a corporate headquarters.
Well, it's a tax-free haven as well, and prices are noticeably cheaper in the restaurants too. And so it has its own certain attractions here, as the crowd very politely applaud the leaders here as they're now heading towards the second sprint of the day, third sprint of the day rather, and the climb of the Arcolis. They're going to get there, Paul, with about 8 minutes lead, I reckon.
And one other thing, Phil, with the fact that the sprint points have all been taken away by this breakaway of 9 riders, that gives Mark Cavendish a good way of conserving his lead in the green jersey points classification, which he held on to yesterday only by a single point.
Now, you can't call that a house with a view if you sit at the back, can you?
No, but you've got to be very careful when you go out the kitchen door.
You certainly have. It's a long way down, folks. I never know how they get the bricks up there.
Well, the bricks wasn't the hard part, Phil. I think it was actually the mortar.
Indeed. Yes, looking down to the bottom, there's the race going underneath. And we don't have any knowledge of that little property, do we? What a shame. As we go underneath that property, heading towards the other end of the town, then the climb steadily uphill.
Well, now the computer has changed its tune a fraction. It's now saying that they're going to survive the breakaway, but instead of holding on to about 4 minutes of their advantage, they will probably only conserve 1 minute 55 seconds of their advantage. It just depends on how the legs are of the riders in this breakaway and when they've still got enough energy to drag their bodies up this very nasty climb to the finish. The main field has certainly whipped up the pacemaking. That's all under the control of Mr. Lance Armstrong's team Astana. And of course, not to discount Alberto Contador, who won the Tour de France in 2007. After that, he went on to win the Giro d'Italia and the Vuelta a España. I think Jérôme Pinot here on the left-hand side, Phil, is starting to say, ouch, this hurts a little bit.
Bryce Fellou playing what we call the ticket collector here at the back of the race. He's looking as though he might be yo-yoing just a little bit here now. This is not the climb, but we are very definitely going uphill.
Yes, that's the sad thing about this climb, Phil. It climbs all the way to the start of the climb officially. And I would say, as we left Andorra last night, I don't think there was one flat part on the course from here all the way to the summit in Arcolis, and it just gets steeper and steeper as you get closer to the finish.
Now that's a roundabout, Paul. That one has been stretched out like a long sausage, so it's round at both ends. Looks like actually a dog bone, doesn't it?
Oh, it certainly does. And
all back together,
as we see there, that Bienvenutis at Andorra. Welcome to Andorra, and that's for the 9 leaders who now are starting to find out what it's like when you've been at the lead head of a bike race like the Tour de France for such a long time, and then all of a sudden you're changing from throttling along that big gear on the flat roads at 45, 50 kilometers an hour. You change the completely other end of your gear ratios, and you've got to find that very high turning speed cadence.
Well, Riblon, the rider who's just dropped off a little bit, looked to be a bit tired. He hasn't started the climb yet. He's the leader in the King of the Mountains right now. The leader is Nocentini setting the pace. Igor Martinez coming up to him. But Nocentini at the moment is the man most likely to become the race leader tonight if he finishes 3:13 ahead of the main field. 25 kilometers to go for the leaders now, as Igor Martinez wants some service there. They're getting ever so close now to the actual start of the climb, and we're already going uphill.
Well, Igor Martinez there putting his hand up. I presume that is only to take on board some more liquid. You're allowed to take on liquid up until 20 kilometers to go to the finish, and just check out the way that wind is blowing. Unfortunately for these riders this afternoon, it is actually a tailwind, and that could be to their advantage, so they won't lose an awful lot of time on the run-in up towards the start of the climb of Arcolis. This is the arrière du peloton. This is the rider who was in difficulty before. That was Angelo Furlan, and now he's just hoping to survive.
Well, we're counting down now, Paul. Officially, we'll be through the final sprint of the day, 16.5 kilometers to go. And then just after that, we'll start the climb of the Arcolis. There's a big barrier there which drops down when the snow closes the mountain for the summer, and you can go for skiing only. But at the moment, it's open. Saxo Bank's team cars there.
So there's a little bit
I wonder
of
what Cancellara's feeling like.
That would be a nice question to have an answer to. I would think he probably is feeling quite good, because I think in these this last month definitely of the season, he's found himself some serious form, and he will be hoping today to try and survive. And he's coming up to the front. He's going to put himself probably onto the wheel of Lance Armstrong and hope that Armstrong and Alberto Contador don't have the big accelerations on the slopes of the climb, and he can stay in contact. So there we are, nestled right in the very heart of the Pyrenees, the Principality of Andorra. And today the scene for the arrival of the first big mountain stage of the Tour de France, and maybe the first big change in the overall classification. At the start of the day, Fabian Cancellara was the leader of the race by 22/100ths of a second over Lance Armstrong, with Alberto Contador, his teammate, in third place at 19 seconds. And then after that, Andreas Kloden in fourth and Levi Leipheimer in fifth. Team Astana occupying 4 of the top 5 places because of their brilliant performance in the team time trial competition a couple of days ago. Over on the left-hand side, you can see a couple of black and red jerseys. That's the Case d'Epargne squad, moving Oscar Pereira to the front of the pack. And I've also seen the red and black jerseys of Lotto trying to move Cadel Evans up as we now go through the next sprint point, and it's down now at 23 kilometres to go to the finish, to the 9-minute mark. The minutes are now starting to tumble away from the overall advantage of the 9 leaders. Just at the back of the pack there, that is Marcin Sapa, the Polish rider on Team Lampre. He was in the breakaway just yesterday, if you remember, and unfortunately for him, he was pulled back into the fold at the end. Alessandro Balan is the rider with the white shorts and the rainbow bands around his jersey. He's the world champion, and he's trying to use this Tour de France to get him back to some kind of form. He's had a difficult season this year, and only yesterday did he produce his best ever performance of this season. Going out of the back, and this is Mark Renshaw. I'm wondering if Mark is having a little bit of a hard time here because of the climb. He realises what sort of time he's got to do to make sure he doesn't get eliminated. He's one of the big lead-out men for Mark Cavendish, the man who's already won 2 stages in this race. A fast man from the Isle of Man, nestled in between Great Britain and the United Kingdom. Been nestled in between the island and Great Britain. Team Astana through the streets of Andorra now, and all of there thinking there's Mark Renshaw, number 78, getting himself back onto the tail end of the group. A lot of the sprinters at this point are just trying to hang on for as long as possible till they see a big split and a group forming at the back of the race called the Gruppetta, or the Autobus, and that's a group of riders who are not very good at climbing but have to stay together to survive, to get themselves inside of the elimination time. Also slipping back there as well is Michael Rogers, number 79, Mick Rogers, involved in a nasty crash yesterday and obviously in a whole host of hurt.
This is just at the rear of the field, but you can see visibly it's picking up Mark Renshaw. Oh, and there's been a crash there on the roundabout. 1 or 2 spectators running. It looks like a Rabobank rider yet again, Paul, and every day this happens. Joost Postuma. Now, is that number 11?
No, it's 12.
Oh, thank heavens for that. Well, sorry for Michael Delarge, but I thought it was number 11 there when I just saw
Mark
the one
Cavendish.
Of Mark was down, and so too is a Columbia rider with him. It looks like they're all okay.
As an Astana rider there.
Trouble.
Tom Bonin on the far side.
Pictures are breaking up. I think the Astana guy is Leipheimer.
Unfortunately, we had a little bit of picture breakup just at that time.
Well, there's a lot of riders here looking for bicycles. It seemed to be a bit more serious than we thought. Nobody's hurt, but they've been delayed at a crucial approach.
Well, that crash must have happened pretty much at the front end of the main field, Phil. There's Mark Cavendish. He's up and away. He's got a teammate just in front of him who will wait, and we'll get a chance to see that. Mick Rogers
again. Let's hope he hasn't crashed again after yesterday. He may just be waiting to help Mark Cavendish. We passed Bonin there. Now, it looks as though if it was Levi Leipheimer, I'm not sure because our pictures did freeze on this.
I think it was. Here he is.
But it looks like it was. Yes, that's Leipheimer having to be taken back to the leaders. That's the sort of thing you don't want at the start of the climb of the Arcleys. He's still got a little while to settle down, and 2 boys are going to pace him back. Bad time to crash, though.
Well, that was Dmitry Muriev was pacing him back there, along with Gregory Rass, and those are 2 guys who've done an awful lot of work, so it's going to be a long, hard chase for Levi Leipheimer at that point.
Well, the fact it involved Leipheimer means that crash at the sharp end of the peloton, and that's unusual and can be very, very dangerous. And this is a group, as you can see, we're coming up on... Oh, sorry, no, we switched up to the leaders. I thought the field is split to pieces for a moment. But no, these are the 9 riders in the lead, and they're not worried about the crash behind. Leipheimer should recover okay, because the Astana team who are on the front will try and slow this race down now and get Leipheimer back in.
Well, if most of the pacemaking was being done by Team Astana, Phil, they will slow down quite a fraction. We're just looking down there at this thermological spa. There's a very hot spa there. The water is up to 60 degrees Celsius, And I would say the temperature is pretty high in the main field because of the excitement of that crash. Here is Leipheimer just in getting himself onto the back end of the main field, but he's left his two teammates behind him, and not surprising because Muriev and of course Gregory Rast have done a lot of pacemaking on the flatter part of this course.
But they've done their job. They've helped him get back, and he's in the pack, and he's not going to hang around Igor Anton at the back here. I'm a bit surprised number 62 is actually back here at this stage of the game.
Well, he was involved in one of those crashes yesterday on the road into Barcelona. You see a lot of riders bandaged up, and more than 20 riders went to see the doctor last night to get themselves cleaned up and repaired after the incredible charge into Barcelona.
Now, who's on the front now? You can see the more steady tempo. Armstrong dead centre in the black helmet here. The Liquigas boys have moved forward for Kreuziger, Nibali, and indeed Pelazzotti. They want to launch those fellas on the attack today. So Leipheimer's got back, and he wants to get up to the front quickly.
Third rider in that line of Astana riders is Jaroslav Popovic. Armstrong is on the right. You easily pick him out with his black helmet, but the other Astana rider on his shoulder over on the other side is Alberto Contador. Yellow jersey, you can see the yellow helmet of Fabian Cancellara. He's still looking very comfortable. As you can see, many of these riders getting out of the saddle. That's an indication of the gradient as we start to move away from the centre of Andorra La Vieja. And a little bit of mechanical work here for Tom Boonen. A second day in a row, Phil. He's been on the ground.
You must be wondering what's going on in the Tour de France this year. We are too. We're getting a lot of these crashes. You know, 21 riders were at the doctor's car yesterday after crashes in those last few kilometres of the day. Well, we're continuing to cross Andorra here. It's spread out. It's quite a long linear town, really. 25 kilometres to go for the peloton, while the leaders are heading up to what will be La Cortinada, the final sprint there. The cars are stopped again. Now, why is this?
David Miller was also involved in that crash, and he wears the red jersey as the most aggressive rider of yesterday's stage. But he is now just trying to pull himself back into the fold. So I didn't see him on the ground, but he obviously must have been.
A little bit of a delay, but the cars were stopped maybe to allow dropped riders to go round them, because the streets are pretty narrow. This is the front end of the peloton here, 8:28. We are now approaching the 20 kilometres to go for the 9 leaders. That's 12 miles left to climb, most of it. The last 10 is the steep part of the climb itself. And these 9 leaders are beginning to think now they better start thinking to attack one another. They've got a chance.
They won't start to attack or won't start any accelerations until they get to the final climb, the real steep part of the climb, Phil, which is going to be around about 10 kilometres to go when it really starts to kick in the gradient.
Well, this is the breakaway. This is the back of the bunch now as riders start to repair the damage. Garmin have done what they were told to do by Matt White today, and that was put Christian van der Velde up the front. They've got him up there, and now things are going a little bit pear-shaped for a lot of riders, and the climb, we keep emphasising, is officially not even started. This is the approach road to it.
Well, sadly, the official start of the climb is still 10 kilometres away. There's the Japanese rider we were talking about from B-Box. He's been left behind by the main field. Tom Boonen is bravely trying to get himself back into contact there, Phil, after being on the ground just a few moments ago, as we, with the magic of television, pop up to the leading group of 9 riders who are still holding on to an 8.5-minute advantage.
And they're riding good, steady tempo. They'll be beginning to think that they might have it, but it's come down quite rapidly from 12 minutes to just over 8, or just under 8.5, as we're now at 19 kilometres to go. I think the attacks won't come till we start the actual climb, though.
No, that would be the time when it really does kick up. This is a false flat for the next 10 kilometres till we get to the actual start. We're coming into the town of Ordino, and the small town of Ordino is the heart of one of the parishes. There are 4 parishes in this area of Andorra. And this little village is a nice little village with some narrow streets, and one of the base stations for many of the ski resorts which have abounded here over the last few years. Still prepared to do the pacemaking at the front, Ronaldo Nocentini with his teammate up there, Christophe Riblon. Riblon got himself a lot of points in the early part of this race for the King of the Mountains classification, and that is going to be decided on the final slopes of the climb. The orange jersey there on the shoulder of Egoy Martinez, the winner of a stage in the Vuelta a España, and early on in his career a win in the Tour de l'Avenir, a very famous race for up-and-coming riders in France.
Well, that's the situation so far. I must say, Paul, what we've got to talk about now is the approach to Arcolis. We keep on emphasising it's the last 10 kilometres. They're climbing already, but the last 10 are special.
The difficult thing about this climb is you've got a 10-kilometre false flat valley road before you actually start the road. And that is once you turn off and onto the climb of Arcolis, that's when the gradient really starts to kick in, and that's when it really starts to become extremely painful. The gradient sticks up to an average of around about 7%, but there's a couple of points at 9%, and as you mentioned earlier, round one or two of the corners there, you're probably looking at between 15 and 20%, so you've got to make sure you take the right line around the bends.
Absolutely. It is, well, it's going to be really interesting. They're obviously going to attack in the pack to see who is strong and who is suffering, and they're going to attack in the break for the same reasons. So we're going to watch two races today. Now, if Nocentini stays ahead of anybody from the pack that matters by 3 minutes 13, he is the next leader of the Tour de France. If Cancellara or Armstrong can get inside 3:13 to him, one or the other will either be the next leader or will keep the lead. It's quite a conjuring of figures today.
There was the winner of yesterday's stage going backwards there, and that in fact was Thor Hushoff. This is David Miller, the aggressive rider of yesterday, who lost out a chance of victory with just 1 kilometre to go to the finish. A brave move by David Miller, and unfortunately on this occasion it didn't work. Getting a chance to move through the field here and see all of the riders who have been caught out by the steepness of this climb. Johan van Summeren going backwards there, one of the big helpers for Cadel Evans. Now that's a little bit of a surprise.
Well, he did do a lot of work, in fairness, for Johan. He's been racing at the front to bring Cadel into a position. Now it's time to check out and check back, I guess, and hopefully get home himself. But you see, I think they could have actually said, I'm being honest with the riders, this climb starts in Andorra, and not just said it starts with 10 kilometres to go to the finish.
Just looking at the style of the riders here, Phil, this is supposed to be the false flat before the actual start of the climb. Everybody has been caught unawares. That was Koen de Kort going back there for Team Skill Shimano, as the leading group of 9 now line up for this final sprint of the afternoon, and this is the sprint at La Cortinada, the last sprint of the day. But more importantly, I think what this last 20 kilometres is all about is the last 10 kilometres, really, the climb up to Arcolis.
Once they cross the line here, 16.5 kilometres left of the day's stage. The gap continues to tumble down, 7:48 now. So they're going to reach those last 10 kilometres with maybe 6 minutes lead. Begin to think 6 minutes may not be enough.
It may not be. There's Thomas Voeckler, the winner of a stage just a couple of days ago. He's not one of the best climbers in the peloton here. He's just looking to try and survive, but he's being tailed off as well. You know, when you make a big effort in a breakaway like Thomas Voeckler did a couple of days ago, it takes you a little while to recuperate and get back to some form.
Filippo Pozzato also tried to win yesterday. He's also unhitched from the group. We've gone back up to the leading group here as they head up toward La Cortinada, and it's here where, whether they sprint or not, I don't know, because now they're getting a little bit more preoccupied with the big win. Is that Bryce Feliu going to have a little attack? Has he got? No, he's just keeping up with Wales.
I think he's just happy to be in the group. Alexander Kuczynski at the back there in the lime green jersey of Liquigas. A lot of the work now being done by the former time trial champion of Spain, and that's Jose Ivan Gutierrez. He's probably thinking about the possibility of a return to the front of the race by Oscar Pereiro or even Luis Leon Sanchez.
Now, I reckon the first to go will be the orange jersey of Igor Martinez. Remember last year when the Tour de France went into Prata Novoso? Igor Martinez led all the way, and Simon Gerrans beat him in the end in the sprint from Australia.
Yes, but I think Igor Martinez is a very crafty rider. He will wait a while, Phil, but until he gets to the foot of the climb completely and it starts to get extremely steep, and that's where he will probably lay the foundations for his attack if he feels he can distance himself from these riders. Again, a little bit of chaos at the back end of the main field. That's Kurt Atler Arvidsson. He was delayed by that accident a little earlier. And these are the riders now who are starting to suffer. One of his teammates going backwards there. Well, Gutierrez got the points there ahead of Pinot and Frolinger. As we move up here, I'm trying to see if any of the big favourites have been caught out by this acceleration. That's Juan Antonio Fletcher, the Rabobank rider there in the orange. Further forward, that's Sebastian Lang, and he's the man that's supposed to look after Cadel Evans on the early slopes. And also, just in that small group there, I think I noticed Stijn de Volder, the Belgian time trial champion. Well, they've had a pretty serious sort out because from the 196 riders that started the bottom of this climb, this group here looks to me as if it's down to around about 50. Bradley Wiggins there for Garmin in the orange shoulders and white jersey. He's looking very comfortable. Reckons he's got great form this year. Christian van der Velde over to the other side. 7 minutes and 40 seconds. Moving up there for Rabobank is Juan Manuel Garate. You might notice him. He's got the yellow and red armbands on, and that's an indication that he's a former Spanish national champion. It certainly is a fairly small group, and considering we haven't yet started the climb, it's going to get reduced more.
Not a very big peloton, Paul. That crash has dealt a blow to some riders. We just need to scan this peloton and make sure the stars are here. There's Contador peeking through. Lance Armstrong in front of him. Now, as far as we know, has Leipheimer got it back here? Yeah,
Leipheimer got to the back end of the group. I'm not sure if he rode himself up to the front end of the main field. The computer has changed its tune completely now, Phil, because our onboard computer here is saying that the breakaway will get caught at 2 kilometres to go.
You see, even the computer can't make its mind up.
Here in the group is number 1, Carlos Sastre, so he's comfortably there. And if we could have another look at the back end of that group, we'd get a chance to see whether Levi Leipheimer had the time to get himself up through the field and to make contact. The leading group of 9 now, there seems to have lost a certain amount of their impetus, Phil.
Well, the 15 kilometres to go, I think they haven't really slowed down. It's just that the peloton have got a high tempo going here now in an attempt to crack the field. The field has thinned out dramatically. Now, Carlos Sastre finished the Tour of Italy in terrific form. And if he's held on to that form, it'll come good right now, because this is his playground, the mountains. Although, for me, he's riding way too back down that peloton.
There's Dave Zabriskie over on the left-hand side for Garmin. He's looking very comfortable. We had mentioned earlier that we've seen Zabriskie ride very well on mountain stages, especially if they go up at this very steady pace. And they're still not putting the man in yellow, Fabian Cancellara, into any difficulty at all.
No, but he's not on the climb yet. But even so, he looks as though he's concentrating well. This is a big test by Astana once again. The rider behind the yellow jersey with the red top to his shoulders is Andy Schleck. And Andy, I fear, will try to gain time today because he's lost a little bit en route. And Leipheimer is there, the yellow number in our vision now to the left of our picture. So he's just recovering from the fall. So Astana at full strength again. But that field, I have to say, has thinned out a lot.
It's thinned out a lot because of the combination, Phil, of the crash, but also because of the fact that they put the hammer down coming to the outskirts of Andorra. Looks like Stefan Goubert there trying to take on board a drink for the final climb of the day. 14.2 kilometres to go to the summit, and still they haven't got to the steep part of this climb. Levi Leipheimer sitting at the back. I'd also noticed that Carlos Sastre was there with Inigo Cuesta. We're now looking at 14 kilometres to go. 7.5 minutes is the advantage of the 9-man leading group. At the back of the pack there, you can just see Levi Leipheimer. He was involved in that accident as we went through Andorra, but he's managed to make the junction with what is not a large number of riders surviving in the main peloton. It really has already started to thin itself out. Astana are all over the front of this group here. That is Jaroslav Popovic. Armstrong, very easy to pick out because he's got a black and yellow helmet, a completely different helmet to the rest of the team. And his helmet there is emblazoned with the Livestrong logo behind him. Alberto Contador. Roberto Contador, by many standards, has been regarded as being one of the best climbers in the world. Well, he's got a chance here this afternoon to show us why he's earned that title, because we're coming up to one of the highest mountaintop finishes in the Tour de France. In fact, the 3rd highest mountaintop finish that the Tour has ever been up to at 2,240 metres.
Stijn de Volder, he's very good at time trialing. He's in spot above at the back of the race right now in this group. The yellow jersey of Cancellara just dropped back a little bit there as somebody swung over to... Oh, that's why. I wonder why they're diving over there. Little bit of a warning from Jens Voigt, who's gone straight down the centre but warned everybody of the bollards on both sides.
Jens Voigt is there in the Saxo Bank jersey, the white jersey with the band across the front. He is a man who will be doing a lot of work over the next few kilometres to look after the chances of Fabian Cancellara. Hard to believe that 4 years ago we were looking at this man retiring from the sport, but Lance Armstrong is back, and he's currently in second place overall at the Tour de France, Phil, by 22/100ths of a second.
Well, they're running at just over 7 minutes, nearly 7.5 minutes behind. We've gone back up to the breakaway, who are 13.3 kilometres from the summit. Very soon they'll be on the big climb of the Arcalys. That comes at 10.2 from the summit. Adjustments here.
Like Leipheimer, and he was
that's because of the crash.
And he's riding a spare bike, and obviously the spare bike hadn't been completely and utterly adjusted to the right position for Leipheimer. He must have had a problem when he went down there. Yep. But you see the race referee keeping a very close eye on him. They're trying to straighten up that saddle and make sure that it's at the right height for the final climb of the day. Well,
Martin Brun is a Dutchman. He's a very good referee, I have to tell you, and he'll allow that for just a certain amount of time, and then he'll say, thank you, Astana, that's finished, and they'll have to let him go. But because the situation was caused by an accident rather than a lack of leg power, he takes that into account too. 7:21, 13 kilometres. It's going to be a desperate finish either way for these leaders now. I think they've just realised this. A little bit of respite before we get on to the climb itself. Just a little bit of a tip downhill slightly.
Not much, though, because once they get out of the small town here of Lourdes, they go into El Serrat. And at El Serrat, that's when the climb starts in earnest. That's at 10.5 kilometres to go to the finish. Astana, Phil, are not asking anybody else in this bike race for help at all. They're just sitting at the front, tapping out the pacemaking, doing all of the work that is required.
Gap 7:16 at the last sprint banner there of the day. The peloton is 16.5 kilometres from the finish. The leaders are just on 12.5 kilometres from the finish. So it's a 4 kilometre spread now. Can they go up that climb 4 kilometres quicker than the boys up front?
I'll just notice Cadel Evans riding at the front end of the main field. Alberto Contador, champion of Spain in the individual time trial, looking a little bit nervous over at the camera there, wants to make sure he's concentrated on the wheel in front of him because he knows he is coming into his terrain in a few moments' time.
Contador and Armstrong, to me, don't look at all overly concerned at the moment. They are well settled in. They don't look frightened at all as they now wait for the start of the climb.
La Cortinada for the main field is still under the directorship of Team Astana. Everybody else waiting in the wings to see if they make any mistakes. Number 13 managed to get himself back into contact with this group. Teammate of Cadel Evans there, Sebastian Lange. He was caught up in the crossfire of that accident as we went through the capital of Andorra just a few moments ago. A bit further up there, I can just see one of the riders from Team Colombia. That was George Hincapie. So Hincapie not doing too badly here either. He was also involved in a crash yesterday. In fact, he went down onto the ground in the same crash that caught out Mick Rogers. Jens Voigt taking on board a drink there. A little bit of an organised feed for some of the riders. This is Sergio Paulinho on the front, the Portuguese rider on Team Astana. Behind him in the dark glasses is Jaroslav Popovic. But further back there is Jaime Zubeldia. He's the rider with the taller rider in third position. After him, it's Armstrong. After him, it's Contador. Behind them, it's Andreas Kloden. And at the back of the group, Levi Leipheimer, I think, has just managed to remake contact after the little adjustments done to his machine. 15 kilometres to go. Inside 15 kilometres to go now for the front end of the main field, and they've reduced that 12-minute advantage of the 9-man leading group down to 7 minutes. There's the champion of Luxembourg, Andy Schleck, in the red, white and blue. There is the yellow jersey of Fabian Cancellara. He's holding on and he's hanging tough for the moment, but he's facing up to the final 10 kilometres, where all of a sudden the gradient changes here in the Tour de France. We've been riding along here since we left Andorra with an average gradient of around about 5%, but shortly we will go on to the slopes of Arcalys, and that is when it starts to get tough. That's Evans, second in the Tour de France last year and second the year before that, just taking on board a drink while we rejoin the Tête de la Course, the head of the bike race, and you can almost see the difference in speed between these riders and the front end of the main pack. just outside of 11 kilometres to go, still holding on to 7 minutes advantage. These riders soon will be coming on to the early slopes of Ordino Arcalis, the ski resort, which is situated in the northern valley of Andorra, and there are 3 big skiable domains here: the northern valley, Arcalis, Arnizal and Pal, and there's about 91 kilometres of slopes.
Now, super riding here as they continue. There's a lot of gain here, especially with Christophe Riblon in the front group. He's won every climb of the day. If he could just get points at the top, then he would be pulling on the leader's jersey. But there's 40 points for the man that wins today in the King of the Mountains. And so whoever wins will get that leader's jersey. Looking as we pan down the riders here now, they are not quite on the lower slopes yet of the climb of Arcalis, but they're not far away either. The gap is down to just 7 minutes. It's going to be very much touch and go. It all depends, Paul, on who attacks from the peloton and when.
And it also depends on whether they've still got energy in the legs after an extremely long breakaway, because when you hit the wall on the slopes of a climb, you can lose a minute for every 1 kilometre of ascension. If you're a good climber, though, you can get into a rhythm and you can survive. But I have a feeling we're going to see a pretty serious showdown. You look at the faces of Armstrong, Contador, Andy Schleck, Cadel Evans. They know that this is important. The access to Arcalis is 6 kilometres away.
And it's got a green sign, which means it's open. That's a relief, isn't it? As we now, it's still not the lower slopes. We get through the town first before we start the real climb. We're still going uphill. El Serrat is the town, and as we leave it, you might catch a glimpse of the barriers, which they normally drop down when the snow makes the road impassable.
Well, we just went past the sign there, which indicated that the real start of this ascent, 10.6 kilometres to go to the summit, and still no move from this leading group of 9 riders, and they are hanging tough together here. But as soon as they get to the steeper part, somebody is likely to make a move, and I wouldn't be surprised with your tip, Phil, of the man in the orange jersey, Egoy Martinez, because he's a great climber.
They may feel they may have to attack early here, and we've gone back to the bunch. This is Juan Antonio Fletcher, who's dropping back now from Rabobank. Denny Menchoff, who lost time and he fell off in the team time trial. But A, he's got to stay with that group, but B, he really should move ahead and gain a bit of time today. It's a long road back for Denis Menchov. He's going to feature on the podium in Paris.
Nobody's come to the front yet to relay Sergio Paolino of Team Astana. He's very happy just to set the pace-making until they get to the steeper part of this climb. Ready to take over. Now here's the first man to lose contact with the leading group of 9. This is Alexander Kuczynski. And he's obviously decided to find his own comfortable rhythm to try and get to the summit of this climb. A long day at the head of affairs for him, and now he's just got to try and survive and see whether or not he can stay off the front end of the main field. But the way the main field is going to hit this climb, I really think that he doesn't have too much of a chance. Finished second in the Ghent-Wevelgem race in the early part of this season, did Kuczynski, but that was a very, very flat race in the northern part of France, or I should say across the border in Belgium. So 1 casualty so far as we head up to 10 kilometres to go. 2 riders from AG2R setting the pace as we go up to 10 kilometres to go, and their advantage just 6.5 minutes. It's Christophe Riblon and Rinaldo Nocentini making the pace.
Astana still controlling the head of the peloton. Everybody now is on the climb of the Arcalis.
Yes, and it's still on the front end, Phil. Sergio Paolino doing all of the pace-making and starting to queue up behind him, though. There are 1 or 2 other teams you can see just on the right-hand side. Garmin, Slipstream, they're ready to take over.
The gap is 6 minutes 34 as they come to grips now with the mountain Andorra Arcalis. 9.7 kilometres for the leaders, who are now down to 8 men. They've just dropped Alexander Kuczynski, and it looks as though they're going to have to work hard to hold off the whole field that's left here.
Well, you've got to put your mind into the mind of a worker in a situation like this. Sergio Paolino is not thinking about himself this afternoon. He is thinking about getting himself onto the threshold of pain, onto the real edge of the maximum of his ability, and keeping it there for as long as possible, because he knows that the longer he can ride at the front, the easier it's going to be for his teammates and his team leaders to do the pacemaking in the end of this race.
That's exactly what they're doing. They are just controlling the pace here. It's up to the other riders to attack. Otherwise, this is the way the race will finish today for Contador and Armstrong. I wonder if Armstrong would try to nip out the pack and grab a second so he would get yellow.
Bear in mind that Lance Armstrong is only looking for 22/100ths of a second over Fabian Cancellara. And riding at a steady pace like this currently actually plays into the hands of Cancellara. What will assassinate Cancellara is a lot of accelerations and decelerations. He can't take that kind of change in rhythm.
Yeah, well, that's true. He is only 22/100ths, but that's on countback. He must get a whole second on the road race to take the yellow jersey away. They only use those countbacks of tenths in the event of a dead heat, as it was the other day when Cancellara in the team time trial. It was an amazing race indeed. Cadel Evans is number 11, if you can see him, the rider who's finished second the last 2 years in the Tour de France. He's got to make a move. He's starting the day 2 minutes 59 seconds behind Cancellara. He needs to show he can make up a little bit of that time.
Quick glimpse at the back there. You might have just seen number 2. That's Inigo Cuesta. He's the oldest man in the bike race, Phil, at 40 years of age. He's been a professional for 16 years, and he's here to look after the interests of Carlos Sastre, who currently is riding a little bit too far back in this main group for my liking.
Sergei Ivanov is the rider in the white Katusha jersey there, the champion of Russia. Somebody's just pushing the pace up a little bit. This is the Case de Pan team flying the flag for Spain on Andorra territory. There's no Andorran cyclists in the professional circuit, so Spain will have to fly the flag for them as well today.
Cadel Evans over on the left-hand side. He's looking fairly comfortable, keeping himself at the front end of the pack. He's got a couple of teammates in the group with him as well to look after him. Matty Lloyd, I'd noticed, was definitely there. Sebastian Lang had managed to scramble his way back into this group. And also getting up there for Cadel Evans' team is Jürgen van den Broek.
That's Cadel on the far side of our picture there.
And Charlie Wagelis in there for Team Lotto.
Actually,
so he's got a lot of men around him for the moment, Cadel, so he can't complain too much.
I think he'll take a lot of encouragement from that. The team are having to, at least trying to do their best to help him, because they're not the quality, one has to say, of Astana, for example, who are using their silver medalist at the Olympic Games in Athens, Sergio Paulinho, to do a lot of the donkey work up here as well. The white jersey far left is that of Tony Martin, and he's the Columbia HTC secret weapon, I think. He's a youngster, but look at the way he climbs. He's going right through on the inside. They're all on the climb now, 10.6 kilometers to the top. The gap is 5 minutes 56, and it is plummeting quite alarmingly now. The peloton have started the climb, but they're now only 2.3 kilometers behind. They're coming at quite a rate.
Well, a little acceleration coming there from Cofidis, and that was Christophe Kern. He looked in difficulty a few moments ago, but he wondered whether or not he had the strength to split the group. But that wasn't going to happen, because Egoy Martinez in the orange jersey there, Phil, was very attentive and came straight across the gap.
Look at them, Paul. They're almost bunching up here in the breakaway. They're slowing down very, very quickly. And the gap is coming down as you watch it. 5:49 now. There's the peloton, just the pacemaking. Sergio Paolini. Lance Armstrong has moved up into third place here, just to keep an eye on things. But it's up to the boys behind to put the attack in. Now there's a little bit of a riders are cracking at the back here. This is Arrieta. Bit surprised there that Jose Luis is dropping off the back, but he is. And we've got, in fact, also Paulinho here. He's now sold out. Once you pop, you pop. He's done his job, and he drops away.
Well, you saw him pushing himself. He was riding right on the edge of his maximum for as long as he could. But once you've done the job in hand, then there's not much more you can do. So he'll just have to ride towards the summit of this climb and survive. Heinrich Hausler there, and he stayed in contact for a very long time on the inside with that white jersey of Cervelo Test Team. We're starting to weed out a number of riders. There is the man I spoke about just moments ago, Phil, Inigo Cuesta. He's going backwards.
And he won a time trial at this very mountain once in the Tour of Catalonia, but not today, I'm afraid. As riders now are cracking thick and fast. Hubert Dupont is the other rider from AG2R. A couple of Garmin boys are gone here, and that is Ryder Hagedal, the Canadian, and Tyler Farrar. I think to be expected, Paul, because they're sprinters, really.
This is the damage that's now being done by a change in pacemaking at the front by somebody from Astana. Now this is a great climber too. Used to ride for Euskaltel Euskadi. It's Haimar Zubeldia himself. He's finished extremely highly placed overall in the Tour de France. Alongside him is Lance Armstrong in the dark helmet there.
And now look at somebody that they've come around that very steep corner on the climb. It doesn't look it, but it really does kick on that inside. That's why they're going round a little bit wide here. Now something's happened here. Well, the first attack has come from Riblon, I think, unless it's Noncentini who's launched the attack, but I think it's Christophe Riblon who has gone. The man that's cleaned up in all of the mountain climbs today, so he's thrown down the gauntlet to tempt the others to come out, and it's put Bryce Feliu into trouble.
And the first man to react once again there, Phil, you can see, is the orange jersey of Euskaltel Euskadi, and that is Egoy Martinez, straight across the gap, nailing him back, but that has reduced the breakaway now from 8 riders down to 4.
Well, the other man just getting on, Johannes Freulinger there. He's a German on the Milram team, riding his first tour. He's been very quiet in this breakaway, but he's obviously watching everybody too.
Well, they've come back together after that little flurry of attacks, but what's more important is that you keep an eye on the time. It's come down to 5 minutes and 30 seconds.
Well, George Hincapie is dropping off the back now as well from the main pack.
That's not really a surprise, because George didn't really come here to win the Tour de France, but just to stay in contact for as long as possible. But that's an indication that the pressure is really starting to come on in that pack.
Well, everybody is starting to drop back now, and our computer is suggesting a catch at 2 kilometres from the summit of the climb. Yes, that was Marcus Foten who has dropped off. We're just giving you views from the rear of the peloton right now. Charlie Wegelius, the UK rider, he also is a good climber, Paul. Yeah, he's clearly he's clearly in trouble today. Sergei Ivanov has cracked as well. He was right at the front moments ago.
Jens Voigt has also disappeared from this group, from the Yellow Jerseys group, from the Yellow Jerseys team. Moving further forward now, you can see this is Nicolas Vaugondi. He was on the ground a little earlier. Again, a little acceleration from the leading group by Christopher Kern. He's trying to move off the group if he can. Joined still by that rider from Milram.
Well, Freulinger is looking as though he's a bit of a surprise here. He's marked every attack so far, and he hasn't been that active in winning the prizes all day. But he's got across to Christophe Kern. Here comes Jose Ivan Gutierrez. And I don't think there's much left in the legs of poor old Jerome Pino, the 8 times Tour rider. He looks as though he's not going to react to that one. Neither Gutierrez as well.
Well, Freulinger decided there. You can see the yellow jersey on the shoulders of Fabian Cancellara. He's under a little bit of pressure now, Phil. He's lost a number of teammates, but he's still hanging tough in there, staying in contact with the group. He will try and ride at his own pace for as long as possible.
Well, he's got a grimace on his face, but he's looking strong. He's still fighting. Right down there in the white jersey behind Lance Armstrong. What does that face tell you? Not a man in trouble for sure. Or that one of Alberto Contador. These boys are tapping out a rhythm, and the rest can get on with it. They're not in any trouble at all, and neither is the youngster Tony Martin just behind them.
There was George Hincapie going backwards. There you can see Christophe Moreau finished 4th overall in the Tour a number of years ago, but these are riders who are in the groups being left behind by the acceleration and the work being done by Team Astana. We move further forward here now, leaving those riders behind. This is at the front end of the race. Again, it's Riblon doing the pacemaking, asking Kern to come forward and do some pacemaking himself. But they're losing a lot of impetus and a lot of speed here, although they're still conserving a good 5.5 minute advantage. Haimar Zubeldia now has come back to the front, tapping out the pedal for the team.
Lance Armstrong, deja vu. We've seen it for 7 years, and there must be a lot of people here saying, oh boy, we're going to have to do it all again now. Armstrong is back.
Well, Armstrong is back, but so too at the back of the group is the yellow jersey Fabian Cancellara. He's remaining very much in contact with this group, while in the leading group there's another acceleration coming, and once again it's Reblon, the French rider, on AG2R. But this is where the action is going to happen, Phil. This is where the race is for the yellow jersey. I can see Fabian Cancellara sitting at the back of the group. Now that's not really a very good indication.
No, he's just slipped back a little bit too far for my mind just at the moment. He's dropped down past Big Dave Zabriskie, and it's just a continued tempo to try and crack these guys as they continue now. These look like they must be Australians, I think. But we've got the making, almost as if They're just going to let this tempo go on and see. That's Cadel Evans now. He's moved right up on the back wheel of Contador. Cadel, I think, must try and attack. He must try and take time, even if it's only seconds, wherever he can today.
Phil, what you've got to understand about Team Astana's tactics is they don't need to attack. They've got the riders placed in 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th place overall. All they have to do is try and ride off Fabian Cancellara and get a gap between him and Lance Armstrong, and then they're really in the driving place of the Tour de France. And we thought that Fellou, the young rider from Agri-Toubel, was in difficulty, but now it's his turn to have a go at glory.
A young rider he most certainly is. And he's now deciding to go and try and rip away to what would be a most incredible victory if it were to happen. And there's no reaction from the field yet, because it looks as though Reblon looks round at Nocentini, his teammate. And so they've decided if they chase him, they're going to have to pick up the speed slowly but surely, because they can't answer to this acceleration.
But what's a psychological blow when you're in a breakaway like this? We're still pretty much in the tree line here in the Pyrenees, but once you get out of the tree line, you suddenly start to look up towards the skies, and you can see just exactly where you've got to go. And they haven't got to that point where they can see the finishing line way up in the distance yet, and that will be a real slap in the face.
8 minutes behind at the start of the day, 5:17 in front as we speak. In fact, it's just gone up by 2 seconds, so he's 5:19 in front now. This would be an incredible result if he were to win the stage, but at the moment he's put all the active boys on second command here. The 2 riders on AG2R at the front because they have the most to gain. Oh, and this is a sad sight. This is a sad sight. We saw his face grimacing, and now the tempo of Astana has broken the spirit of Fabian Cancellara, and he's no team here. Andy Schleck is still up there, but he can't come back for him. Schleck now could be establishing himself as the team leader.
Well, you have to understand that Fabian Cancellara had led this race since the individual time trial in Monaco by just a few seconds, and then he was just separated by the overall lead by 0.22 of a second to Lance Armstrong. But what's more important, I think, is now he's realized that he can't stay in contact with this infernal pace which is being set by Team Astana. If we were to stop the race right now with that gap, Lance Armstrong would be the brand new leader of the Tour de France. He will pull on the yellow jersey, but we haven't yet got to the point where there's going to be accelerations and attacks in this race.
Well, Armstrong is now the race leader of the Tour de France on the road. All he's got to do now is finish for the next yellow jersey. Looking at this incessant tempo here of Team Astana, they have put the yellow jersey of Fabian Cancellara in trouble. They will know it because Johan Brunel will have told them in their earpieces that the maillot jaune has cracked, and there he is.
Well, he's just got to get himself into a decent rhythm of some kind now to make sure he doesn't lose too much time. The Swiss television commentators expected him on a day like today, Phil, to lose maybe 1.5 minutes. But when you are in a situation like this, it's no good trying to stay in contact, especially if you're a non-climber, as Cancellara really theoretically is. All he can do now is just try to ride comfortably and sensibly to limit his losses on this climb.
6 Astana riders at the front of the Tour de France main peloton here, while this youngster in his first Tour de France is in desperate moments. Bryce Fellou is just hoping he can win the stage here, and it would be the biggest surprise of the week. There's no doubt about that.
Well, his brother will be crossing his fingers in the group behind, because Romain Fellou is probably in one of the big groups way back down the mountain, a long way behind his young brother, and hoping that his brother survives here this afternoon. He's actually still doing pretty well, because over this last kilometre, Phil, he's not lost any time at all. It's still 5 minutes and 15 seconds back to the group of which is being led by Team Astana.
He's only just turned pro. He's never won a professional race, but it just shows you how you get inspired in the Tour de France. And what an insult to the Spanish and the Andorrans, because here we are on their soil, and a Frenchman daring to go to victory. The only other time we've come here, it was a German, Jan Ullrich, and he won the Tour de France from this win. Now, dancing on those pedals, not quite so slickly anymore, I'm afraid. The chief referee has taken the cars away. He's now left in no man's land. I think Cancellara now will lose all of a minute and a half as he drops away from the leaderboard.
But he did what he wanted to get out of this Tour de France, Phil. He won the opening time trial in Monaco. He held on to the jersey initially all the way down to the team time trial, and then, because of his great performance there, all the way down to the Pyrenees. So not a surprise to see Fabian Cancellara crack here this afternoon. Now he's going to have to turn around and become a domestique or a helper for his team leader, Andy Schleck.
Freilinger stepping on the gas down there at the moment. He's trying to stretch the breakaway. Mastered by Christophe Kern, Nocentini or Igor Martinez. They're the four riders there. Quick acceleration now to try and get up with the rider in the blue strip of the French wild card team, Agri Toubel. And this is one of the youngest guys in the race as he tries now to ride to the top of the Arcalys. What a result if he could make it.
Well, he's only got around about a 15 seconds. He's got a 15-second advantage, and again it's Christophe Kern from Cofidis is going forward, and always marked, always covered by the man in orange there, Egoy Martinez, hoping that it all comes back together and he can get some glory for Spain and of course for his Basque team. Well,
that was a Frenchman actually cheering up Bryce Feyou just there as he continues now to try and hold everybody off. 3.6 kilometres to go. It's not very far, is it? But the roads, I'm afraid, don't get any easier. At 5 minutes and 8 seconds, that's where you'll find the King of the Mountains leader, Auger, Mark Cavendish, and the Maillot Jaune. I haven't seen Mark Cavendish, I must confess, since he fell off down at the bottom of the climb in Andorra.
Well, one teammate here alongside Fabian Cancellara, just pacing him up towards the summit of this climb, and that's Gustav Larsen. He was a silver medalist. Funnily enough, we've got the gold and silver medalist from the individual time trial in Beijing here, side by side on the slopes of this monster mountain in the Pyrenees.
Well, he's going to rely heavily now on being nursed to the summit, to the Maillot Jaune. If he doesn't lose too much time, who knows? But I think as this is only day one in the Pyrenees, there'll be more bad luck or more bad time tomorrow for him. But Andy Schleck is up here, and he is the next obvious candidate to lead the Saxo Bank team. But again, it is all Astana. Their policy of the day was to ride at the front and crack the enemy within.
And that was the enemy that they wanted to beat, the man who has dominated this race over the first week of racing. Fabian Cancellara, Phil, now has lost a huge chunk of time. He was in exactly the same time as Lance Armstrong since the team time trial just days ago, and now he's lost himself. It's going to be more than a minute by the time he gets to the climb. It is so difficult when you've been the yellow jersey to lose that. But today I think the two flat tyres were maybe an indication of the bad luck that was waiting for him.
That was very unlucky. He used energy to get back. He made it look easy, but he used energy. The peloton are through 5 kilometres. They are still 2 kilometres behind the front runners. There's a chance those front runners might just make it. But just look at this incessant tempo here. This is so hard. This is Gregory Rast, I think. No, Zubeldia has gone now. So he's done his work as well. And Jaime Zubeldia is a climber as he is now dropped off the back of the peloton. We are looking at 3 kilometres precisely to the summit of Arcalys, and a young Frenchman is out in front here and trying to clean up. And this is Bryce Feyou. He attacked from the breakaway. He was the most unlikely guy to attack. We saw him struggling at the start of the climb. Not a bit of it.
Well, now he's got himself into a fairly good rhythm, and he doesn't look as if he's under all kinds of difficulties. Riding sensibly. Nice to see a little sign at the side of the road there, Phil, for the Isle of Man, and I'm sure those are supporters for Mark Cavendish, but Cavendish will be a long way back in this race this afternoon. The two riders from AG2R there, you can see Nocentini and Riblon trying to keep the pressure, trying to get the organisation to pull that young rider from Agri Toubel back into the fold. But I think this afternoon that young man, Bryce Feyou, is doing a storming ride.
Well, it'll be a dream come true, and nobody could have believed, but they certainly kept this one a secret. He's such a good young climber. But already Cancellara has virtually lost 1 minute on the Armstrong group now, so Lance Armstrong only has to ride to the finishing line and see nobody in that group gets in front of him and snatches any time to be the next leader of the Tour de France. And in fact, Alberto Contador will have to finish 18 seconds ahead of Lance to claim the yellow jersey, and he won't try to do that. So it's looking very, very good that the dream will be completed. The dream comeback by an American. He could be in yellow tonight. In fact, I'll go as far as to say he'll almost certainly be in yellow.
Yes, I don't think Alberto Contador will lay down an attack here, especially when he knows that his team has got the yellow jersey currently in their midst, in their fold. And Contador just sitting there behind Lance Armstrong, looking at the man who won the Tour de France on 7 occasions. And there's no need at all, and as I've said just earlier, Phil, there's no need at all for Astana to attack. It's the other teams who have to attack if they want to take the lead in this bike race. Nice to notice there that Bradley Wiggins of Garmin Slipstream and of Great Britain was also sitting comfortably in 4th spot.
And looks good. Bradley is saying that he hopes to finish in the top 15. He set himself a very realistic target in the Tour de France, and if he does, that would be a terrific result for the man who's been 3 times a gold medalist at the Pursuit World Champion and the World Championships as well. Well, 5:10 to the white jersey, 6+ to this man here. He's dropping out of it today. He's going to come up, I think, maybe 2 minutes behind the Lance Armstrong Alberto Contador group.
That's Bryce Feliu we're looking at there, a young man for Agri-Toubel, riding the Tour de France for the first time. He's got about a 30-second advantage over a 5-man chasing group. There are 2 riders in there from AG2R. That's Nocentini and Riblon doing the pacemaking behind him, but he's still 2 kilometres to go to the summit.
And battle on with his blue jersey fully unzipped here, taking in the wind. Remember, he's riding into a headwind most of the time here. It does kick around a little bit. It's not always a block headwind, but he will be as he climbs up to the finishing line, right on the top of Arcalys. But he's inside 2 kilometres from the finish now. His tempo is good enough to hold off the chase. There is the main field. They are also there. They're at 32 seconds, the group he has left behind. Armstrong Cancellara is gone now, but Leipheimer, Van der Velde and Contador are still in that group.
I hate to be the bringer of bad tidings, but let's not forget that, in fact, Lance Armstrong has not yet ridden himself into the yellow jersey position, Phil, because he still needs to pull himself back
inside
to Nocentini, because Nocentini was 3 minutes and 13 seconds behind Armstrong at the start of the day. So it could be a very close calculation once we get to the finish line if that group with Nocentini conserves more than 3 minutes and 15 seconds on the line.
Well, at the moment, they've got 4.5 minutes. That's Armstrong's group behind Nocentini, and that is this Cadel Evans who's launched an attack, because I think he had to do it today and he's going to test them. Well, this will cause the reaction, Paul, that will close this gap down.
Well, Evans has moved there straight up into 3rd position is Alberto Contador. Straight onto Contador's wheel is Lance Armstrong in 4th. Cadel knows that he has to do something special here this afternoon to get rid of as many contenders as possible and start to climb back up the overall classification. Look at Armstrong there.
Armstrong's pushed himself right up behind there. This is the old Lance Armstrong. This is the man that did win the Tour 7 times. He is back, and he's back with the same form. Straight onto the back wheel of the rider who has finished 2nd in this race the past 2 years. Contador queuing up to grab hold of Evans as well. Poor old Cadel. He's outnumbered 2-1 again.
Well, moving up there now, it's Andreas Claude, and what a team this is that Team Astana have got. A little bit of difficulty here for at the back there. Zabriskie couldn't take that acceleration, but he stayed in contact for an awful long time. This is Kim Kirken now, going backwards from the group.
And again, it is the young Tony Martin who's still in this group. The white jersey wearer for Columbia HTC, in no trouble at 24 years of age. We race back up towards the leaders again.
This is
a Menchoff, is it?
This is the next big split now. That isn't Menchoff. Menchoff's a little bit further up the road round there. But looking at the face there, Phil, of Armstrong, this is a man who really wants to get the yellow jersey here this afternoon, and they have got such an incredible squad. Levi Leipheimer is still in contact over there to the right-hand side, and it's Cloden now doing the pacemaking. Armstrong doesn't look like a man in difficulty, and there's another move coming here from Team Lotto. They're trying to set something up for Cadel Evans this afternoon. Cadel Evans knows that he has to go on every climb if he wants to try and win this bike race.
Well, I think this is Jürgen van der Broek who's launched an attack there. And that is a bit of a surprise, but that's the 1 kilometre marker for Bryce Feliu. The young Frenchman, out of the blue, could be pulling the biggest race France has ever won in the States of Tour de France for years. And he's only a young rider. And this will be the ride of his life. We'll set him up. They'll all be queuing up to sign him up on the big teams. It's a wild card decision to have brought Agri-Toubel into this. Now, they won't chase this ride. I think it's Van der Broek who's gone clear. Evans is the mark man. He's been put back in his place in 3rd wheel. He's surrounded by Astana. Andy Schleck is also there in 4th wheel. I thought Andy would have tried to move as well, but he doesn't seem to be able to.
Well, I think he may well be waiting for a different day here this afternoon. There's 30 seconds is the advantage of young Bryce Felu over Christoph Kern. Another acceleration coming here, Phil. And again, it was looks like that was, in fact, the rider going round the corner was Jürgen van den Broek, but there's a big acceleration there, and that looks like Alberto Contador.
Well, that's the answer. If he gets 18 seconds on Armstrong, he'll be the next yellow jersey, but there is the reaction from the field. It is mano a mano here, as the gap is continuing to go like this. And it looks to me as though Contador, they've got to shut down the gap on Nocentini, who is up the road. And our clocks have stopped giving us the actual time checks at the moment.
The chase there is coming from Andy Schleck, who's noticed how dangerous this is. Cadel Evans has gone onto the defensive. He's in second position. Armstrong is still there. At the end of the day, this man needs 20 seconds to take the overall lead away from his own teammate Lance Armstrong. He started the day 19 seconds in arrears, but he is a great champion and a great climber as well, and he's put pressure on this group. Andy Schleck now tried to get across the gap, but couldn't. Armstrong will play the defensive role and sit there and see whether or not they can pull back the Spaniard into the fold. And Cadel Evans, if he wants to do something, needs to go again.
Well, that is the advantage of having two great cyclists on the team. One can block for the other. If you catch the other one attacks. This is the man who's riding to the greatest moment of his very young bicycle career. He's just signed professional for the Agri Turbel team, rather. He got into a breakaway today of 9, and he's gone to win on the highest mountain of this year's Tour de France. He can't have ever dreamt of this. Don't slow down now, Bryce, as he hits the line. Victory for France in the most amazing circumstance, and indeed a 1-2, because Christoph Kern has crossed over in second place. But this is the battle for the next yellow jersey. It's all down to time. Remember that Nocentini 3:13 ahead of Lance Armstrong at the start, even further ahead of Alberto Contador. And this is the second rider here, is Nocentini crossing the line. Looks to be about 20 seconds there. Now Alberto Contador has flown away from this group. He has put in the decisive move here, and he's free to fly. Now Lance Armstrong is compromised. He's got a block here for his teammate. He's going to be more preoccupied now with the whereabouts of Cadel Evans, and might I just say the whereabouts of Bradley Wiggins as well, because he is still in this front group. Now look at the face here of Contador. He's fighting for seconds here, seconds that could give him the yellow jersey tonight. We're not too sure on the finishing time there of the Nocentini, but he was 3:13 plus a little bit more overnight behind. So it looks now as though it could be a battle, but have they done enough to give the Italian the yellow jersey, or will it go to Lance Armstrong, who was ahead by some 20 seconds on this rider at the start of the day? 1K to go. Alberto Contador under the 1 kilometre. He is still giving it everything. He knows that seconds are violent here. They do really count in the Tour de France this year. One thing is sure now, the yellow jersey of Cancellara has been swept away on this mountain. Is a long way back. We are looking for a new filler of that yellow jersey. There's the counter move. It looks to me as though Cadel Evans has launched an attack with Wiggins again. Well, Wiggins has been absolutely superb on this climb. He's never ridden so well. Contador, a long shot down. You can just see the group chasing. That gap is probably about 15 seconds or so. It could still be Lance Armstrong in yellow tonight as well. They've mastered Cadel Evans again. Wiggins is sat in there just behind. Armstrong, Levi Leipheimer hot here. Frank and Andy Schleck. That's a very select group there as they try to complete the climb up Arcalis. And the clock is running, don't forget. Nocentini is in. It looks like he crossed the line in 4th place. Cadel Evans, his wings are clipped there. There's no more attacks coming from him. Lance, you are the best. Well, what does that mean for Alberto Contador here in Andorra as the Spanish rider comes home? He knows it's a matter of seconds here. You can see it on his face as he drives up towards the line. He cannot afford to sit down. He's just got to push for every second as he comes up towards the line. 2:41 and counting, but that is on the winner's time. It's less 20 seconds, of course, to Nocentini. It is going to be desperately close for yellow tonight. He looks wisely under his shoulder to see nobody is coming, and nobody is. They're at least 15 seconds back of him. Alberto Contador now punches once more. Is he in yellow tonight? The rider who set out from his home country of Spain today, he now finishes in the neighbouring principality of Oh, I nearly forgot the place of Andorra as he races up towards the line here on Arcalis. This has been a fantastic performance, and it might be a little bit surprised. I'm quite sure, you know, this was not the plan for Astana tonight. The clock has tipped a little bit. It might not be enough. Well, it's going to have to be worked out. Whatever is the case, it will be split by seconds tonight overall, and it could be Nocentini. Look at the riding here by the former World Pursuit Champion and Olympic Pursuit Champion. Bradley Wiggins has never ridden a stage of the Tour de France like this. He really has converted from a top trackman to a top roadman. Cadel Evans takes out from the group containing their Wiggins and Armstrong, Frank and Andy Schleck. What a day.
Cavendish and Bradley Wiggins have any gossip to share, they'd better get it out of the way at the start, because they're going to be at opposite ends of the race today. The first major attack of stage 8 came from a big name. Cadel Evans went off the front, although not for long, because the group that formed around him quickly realised that they wouldn't be allowed to get away if he stayed in it. At the back of the race, meanwhile, we were losing a Tour winner. Oscar Pereiro, the 2006 champion, struggled for a while, then called it quits. Mark Cavendish was near the back too, which was bad news for his green jersey hopes, because Thor Hushovd was in the break. Hushovd, who started the day 1 point behind Cavendish, took the first 2 intermediate sprints of the day at 6 points apiece, and so took the lead by 11. Job done, he dropped back out of the leading group, but there are 9 men in it as we pick up the race, the best placed of them in the standings being Luis Leon Sanchez of Kistepan, 24th this morning, 4 minutes 10 behind the leader. That group is on the slopes of the Col d'Agnès with a lead of just under 2 minutes on the field.
Breakaway here, and at the moment Sandy Cassars had a wonderful day out. Port d'Envolira first over the top, the Col de Port first over the top. It looks like he's now looking to complete his hat-trick and get first over the top on the Col d'Agnès. Still a little way to go though before we get to the top. Sanchez, the man with the most to gain, but he doesn't need to be gaining anything inside 2 minutes to break away now.
Well, Sanchez is not thinking about time, he's not thinking about the yellow jersey, he's thinking about individual glory on one of these stages, and this is one of the stages that he actually looked at in the race handbook and said, I like it. And when he came to ride the Route du Sud, one of the preparation races for the Tour de France in this area, he actually took a day out beforehand to go and ride this very route and check out the climbs and to see how they were.
Well, he's making sure they keep the levels up here. And you can see by Cancellara down the back of the line, it is getting a bit hot, this pace. It's gone up by a second, but that's nothing. What's happening is they're going at the same speed as the chasing peloton. And it looks as though Cancellara might have dropped off there.
Yep, and there he is. There's confirmation that Cancellara has dropped off the back. He looked extremely strong over the previous climb, and he didn't look uncomfortable at all, but it just goes to show that those men in front are now putting the hammer down a bit. Luis Leon Sanchez, Phil, realizes that he's got to make sure they don't lose any time on this section of the event. Because he knows in the back of his mind, the Spaniard, that if they ride a slower tempo on this climb and the main field starts to get to around about the 1 minute mark, they will almost certainly get caught on the run-in. He's getting plenty of assistance there for George Hickcappy. And this is Mikhail Ignatiev. They're very prepared now to keep the pressure on and keep themselves off the front end of the main field. And in fact, the raising of the tempo in this group has extended their advantage over the peloton. Luis Leon Sanchez is the man looking for the victory here if they do survive, and he was the man in the black and red jersey of Kistepan. We're waiting here for the main field, and from the flags that you can see there from this region of Ariège, you will realize that the main field is picking up a very rapid tailwind. Summit of this climb, once they get to the top of it, is 1,570 meters. It was first crossed in the Tour de France back in 1988, and it was a British rider went over the summit in first place, Robert Miller. Cyril Dessel on the front for AG2R. They're setting the tempo for their man over there on the right-hand side, Rinaldo Nocentini. He's 31 years of age. He's been a professional since 1999, and I think they'll have a hard time dislodging the yellow jersey, at least on today's stage.
1, 2, 3 AG2R riders now having to drive at the front, but the good news, Paul, is also that Bradley Wiggins, Christian van der Velde, the 2 Garmin boys, are right there up at the front. They're not going to be too worried about this breakaway. They've got it in check. No, they might lose the stage, but they're thinking long term. It won't alter the overall positions at the moment.
I think it's very interesting that Bradley Wiggins climbed so well yesterday, but the explanation goes down to the fact, Phil, now that I think he's got in his mind the decision to become a good road racing rider. He's got an incredible track record where he's garnered himself 3 Olympic gold medals. But since the Olympic gold medal at the Games last year, Phil, he's actually slimmed down by 5 kilos. And that has probably changed his riding quite a bit. And that's probably allowed him to rival some of the great big climbers. And he's also lost an extra couple of kilos since he participated in the Giro d'Italia.
It's all about weight, of course. They used to say you need to come into the race a little bit overweight because of the pressure that goes on the body over 3 weeks. You will lose it anyway, but these boys are slimmed down now. That's a different style of racing these days. This is Sanchez. The Spanish boys perhaps going to perform better than they did in Spain by the look of it, because Mikel Astolosa there is really wanting to drive. They've added 11 seconds on this since the climb started.
Well, there's Roeselare just on the back there. Sebastian Roeselare, the Belgian rider on Team Quickstep. He was dropped just a little bit towards the summit of the Col de Port, but he recovered on the descent and managed to reintegrate the leading group of 9. These guys have actually ridden quite sensibly. I think they rode a fairly steady pace on the previous climb, the Col de Port, but they now know that they're coming to a crucial part in this race, and if they can lift the pace, keep the pressure on, they've got a very good chance of surviving. If they go over the summit of this climb with a 2 to 3 minute advantage, they'll start to think that they've done enough to win the race here this afternoon, because I don't really see Team Astana chasing them down. They're not really concerned if the gap's only between 2 and 3 minutes, and the same goes too, of course, to Team AG2R, who lead this race with Rinaldo Nocentini.
We're looking now at the breakaway. It is still struggling, but there's somebody gone from the front of the peloton here when the gap has stretched out to 2¼ minutes. We're on the climb of the Col d'Agnes, and this is an attack here by Liquigas. Now, is that Roman Kreuziger who's moving clear?
Well, Team Liquigas have got a lot to do in this race. They haven't shown too much so far, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that being one of the riders from their top squad, because Roman Kreuziger is a rider, Phil, who is looking to try and get himself into the top 10 in the overall classification.
Well, they've got 3 riders here who are looking to do a big performance. Their leader is Franco Pelazzotti. Needs to replace a bad day yesterday on the Arcolis before he does well. Also, Vincenzo Nibali is the other rider, but this looks like the youngster, Roman Kreuziger. The only other rider it would be the Belarus Alexander Kuzinski. As soon as our guy gets up onto his face, we might get a good look at this as he goes through. And in fact, it's Frederick Williams. Now, I'm amazed at, but he was in the move at the start of the day on the Envalira and dropped back. He's having another go.
A very rare Belgian rider who moves across the frontier to race for an Italian team. In the front group now, the pressure is coming on from Mikel Astolosa. He's been a professional, Phil, for an awful long time, and one of his biggest wins, in fact, was the Jacobs Creek Tour Down Under, and that's really put pay to the hopes of a couple of guys in this group, especially Sebastian Roeselare and Mikhail Ignatiev on the far side.
Well, this is hard. Roeselare went off on the much easier Col de Port, but he got back on the descent. But this time, I'm surprised the Ignatiev class. I think his enthusiasm a bit more than his heart at the moment, because he's such a young bike rider, but he's not spared any workload in this breakaway, and he's going to pay the price now. That is a huge push by the Spanish riders up there, and knowingly I've got rid of Antonio Fletcher here as well, but Astolosa, rider for Euskaltel Euskadi, which is the northern Spain Basque team, he is a rider now, has got Louis Champtez with him as well.
Sandy Cassar caught out in the crossfire also. He's the man who started the breakaway with a big attack on the early slopes of the Port d'Envalira. But it's not caught out big George Hincapie either. Hincapie really has changed as a bike rider from when he was a young sprinter at 18, 19 years of age, battling it out in races, of course, like the Tour du Pont in the United States. But over the last few years, riding alongside Lance Armstrong, Phil, he certainly has learned to climb.
Well, Sandy Cassar, I think, has got them back in the gun sights here. He might well just come back onto this group, but it's been a good effort, particularly by George and Sanchez and Astolosa, to break up that breakaway, because once over the top, a man like George Hincapie can ride so fast downhill and on the flat. There's Hushop just trying to keep the world in his sights at the moment. Sebastian Lang is the rider on the right, and the other rider, I'm sorry to say, Stuart O'Grady of Australia, who is also losing a little bit of ground at the back of the race there. Well, so once we're over the top, Paul, they might get back. It's a long way home.
Yes, a little bit sad for Stuart O'Grady there, because it's his own team, Team Saxo Bank, who are ripping up the pace at the front end of the main field. So they are obviously taking advantage of the early slopes of this climb, the climb Le Col d'Agnès, and they probably wonder whether or not they can create a little bit of a sorting out. They realise how difficult this climb can be. And now there's a little bit of a surprise to see Dimitri Muriev, one of the riders from Team Astana, going backwards. Pippo Pozzato, the Italian national champion. Just a chance here to see the sort of damage that's being done by the acceleration at the front. Also slipping back there, wearing number 68, Armej Churuka, but he did a lot of work in the early part of the race. Hincapie now finding a good rhythm on the lower slopes of this climb, keeping that advantage at around about the 2-minute mark. Sandy Cassar in the white jersey there has recovered and brought himself back up to form a quintet at the front now. Andy Schleck now has decided is going to make a move. Andy Schleck has said that the first stage of the mountains was not that important, but right on his wheel, you might not be able to see it, is Alberto Contador. So Andy Schleck right now looking over his shoulder. This is something that they've set up. They want to get rid of as many riders as possible straight across, almost no time at all, up to Willems. There is Andreas Kloden. I'm looking to see the black helmet there. The black helmet of Lance Armstrong is also present. Frank Schleck is over to the right-hand side. And I cannot, for the moment, see the presence of the yellow jersey.
Well, Armstrong's there, Paul, but what a move this is by Andy Schleck. They're going to go straight by Fabian Cancellara, which is Andy's teammate. This is the next test.
I don't think he's going to go by. You know, Fabian Cancellara, Phil, can see that this is a tactical moment in the race, and he's going to try and lift himself up a fraction if he can to see where he can create a little bit more damage. This was move that was instigated by Andy Schleck. I saw one or two riders coming to the front from Team Saxo Bank, then the next minute, bang, he comes straight out of the pack.
They've called Cancellara from the break to pace Andy at the front of the splintering peloton. That's teamwork for you now, and that can only spell trouble for Nocentini. Or is he really good enough to wear that yellow jersey? And don't forget, Lance Armstrong and Contador are 6 and 8 seconds behind overall. They only need to shake off the yellow by a few yards.
Andy does not care at all here, looks over his shoulder, checking on the damage that he's doing. Most of the big names here, Phil, in the top 15 in the overall standings are there, but I cannot see the yellow jersey.
We are watching the first big move of the day today. Well, the second really. Cadel Evans tried and failed on the Port d'Envalira, but now this is Andy Schleck, proudly wearing the jersey of the champion of Luxembourg. Cancellara has come back, tried to help him, has dropped away now. That's Michael Ignatieff. Must wonder what's going on from the breakaway. Look at the speed. They say, you know, Paul, that Andy Schleck is probably the most gifted, natural, talented climber.
You know what I adore, Phil, in the morning is reading the French newspapers, and I was reading the French newspaper L'Equipe this morning, and they said, oh, well, this year the Schleck brothers are certainly not climbing the way they did last year. But, you know, yesterday's stage didn't really tell us very much at all. And just for reference, Frank Schleck is in this group as well. The two Schleck brothers are present and correct.
I sometimes am convinced that the journalists around the world write the stories just to get a little bit of controversy going, because half the time they really don't know what they're writing about, do they?
Well, I have to say that I do know that Frank Schleck and Andy Schleck are both riding very well at the front of that pack, because the moment they accelerated, boom, went the main field, and a lot of riders are now left gasping for air. The only sad thing about that move is there's a good 40 kilometres to go from the summit of the climb. Hincapie's under pressure here.
Hincapie managed to make the split when it happened in this breakaway. He got onto the back wheel of Jose Luis Sanchez and of Miguel Astolosa and Vladimir Efekin, but I'm afraid they've lifted the pace just that little bit too much for George, who is not the same talent at climbing as the boys he's falling back from. He's got to drop back into the speed he can handle and then see what happens. This is Sandy Cassar, who almost got onto the leaders, and he's still at the same distance, while Hincapie has come back from the leaders and gone behind Sandy. So the leaders know that they've got to push on if they've got any chance. The old limp left arm there coming from Astolosa was indicating to Sanchez to come through and give him a hand, because they they really have got to push on. The third man is Vladimir Efakim. He won't help at all because he's a teammate of the race leader, Nocentini.
No, he's in an ideal position there. He can just sit back and let the other riders do the pacemaking. Andy Schleck not looking for any friends here, but he's trying to create a serious selection. Levi Leipheimer second, Alberto Contador one by one, Phil. They're picking up the remnants of that 9-man breakaway.
That is Sebastian Rosler, who's being swept away here from Belgium on the quick-step team. But the whole of the Astana strength has jumped onto the back wheel there of Alberto Contador. There is Yellow, who is looking to be in trouble. The boys are trying to keep him in sight, but with Contador and Lance Armstrong moving clear, if they finish 6 and 8 seconds ahead of Yellow, he'll be back to at least third tonight.
Well, the yellow jersey's just not got to panic in a situation like this, Phil. They pull back now. Juan Antonio Fletcher looks over his shoulder to see whether or not he's got any teammates in there, and I didn't actually see Denny Menchoff. I saw Bradley Wiggins climbing superbly in this year's Tour de France into the Pyrenees, and I also saw that Christian van der Velde was present. Under a little bit of pressure there going backwards was Kim Kirken.
Kim Kirken in trouble. This is Roman Kreuziger here, lying second in the best young riders competition, and he finished 12th in his first Tour de France last year. This is a viciously hard climb. It's not just the gradient, it is the speed. The race has gone today. It's running about 8 minutes ahead of best time, and they're continuing a pace on the climb. Casal has ridden really, really well to get back to these three.
He has, in cycling jargon, Phil, pulled himself inside out to get himself into this group, because he realizes if they summit the climb with still an advantage over the group of leaders here, he's got a chance of winning a stage. Number 1, Carlos Sastre. Where is he? Well, he's in the group with all of the main contenders. There at the front you can see all the turquoise jersey. Roman Kreuziger, by the way, Phil, has just come back.
I think he was coming back. I think he missed the split there. He was in the yellow jersey group and he's pedalled up to the leaders. Kirken is also the same situation. We sometimes get lost where our cameras are taking us because we don't know where they're taking us. It looks like they were bridging to the leaders rather than being dropped from the group. Now, this is a very, very select group, and if the hammer goes down over the top, they could ride to the finish and try and chase down the leaders. Armstrong is here, Contador is here, Leipheimer is here, Van der Velde is here, Frank and Andy Schleck are here, Carlos Sastre is here. I think Denny Menchoff is even here at the moment. Kreuziger has just caught up. We're back into the band of contenders altogether.
Well, I think Frank Schleck realizes his brother's got great form, so he's going to try and eliminate as many riders as possible. And obviously they're not going to give any gifts out through the Pyrenees to this man, the man who got the yellow jersey yesterday, Ronaldo Nocentini. If they'd ridden a steady tempo, not had that acceleration from Andy Schleck, I think that this young rider here would have stayed in contact. And now he's on the defensive.
He's got to hope he can hold them in his sights and then tip over the top and get the team round him and chase as fast as they can. The only disadvantage to this move is that it is 42 kilometres from the top to the finish. It is a long way. There's the group now, pedalling steadily. They've got themselves into a nice rhythm here at the moment. Staring into the face now of Lance Armstrong, who is now feeling he's on another big move here. Just behind Lance is the UK Renaissance rider, Bradley Wiggins, who's turning into be a big Tour de France rider this year, sitting 5th overall and making no mistake. Centre it's Leipheimer, left is Andy Schleck, right is Christian van der Velde, who finished 4th last year. This is a group which is now meaning business on the last climb of the day.
Yeah, but Phil, there are so many names there, and we've got so far to go in the Tour de France, and we can't put one rider head and shoulders above anybody else. Yes, yesterday Alberto Contador attacked, but what did he get? A few seconds. This race is going to get played out, I think, in the last week. This is just one of the chapters in what's going to be, I think, a great book, a book which we will talk about for many years.
The move has come early as well, because it's 6.7 kilometres still to the summit of the Col d'Agnès. So there's a lot of time to be gained if the fast tempo riding continues here. The yellow jersey could be destroyed on this climb completely.
Well, 2 Luxembourg riders side by side. On the right-hand side, the champion of Luxembourg, 31, Andy Schleck, riding alongside Kim Kirken, the time trial champion of Luxembourg. This is the face of Levi Leipheimer, a man who, if it wasn't for Armstrong, Contador, Cloden, would be the leader of Team Astana. But here he is, working as a teammate.
It is an amazing situation. They left riders at home on this team who would have walked into any other team in the Tour de France. That's what a tough lineup it is to get selection for Astana. There's 2 riders from Rabobank at the moment down there. One is certainly Menchoff, And I'm just looking for Cadell Evans. He is there too. We've got 2 riders down there. I suspect that the other rider is probably Jurgen van den Broek, as he rode so well yesterday. Evans also has made it.
Look at the ease on the right-hand side there, though, Phil, of the rider in the red, white and blue jersey, Andy Schlecker. And I think once we get to the Alps are going to suit him an awful lot more than anybody else. He's already sort of indicated that after his performance yesterday on the slopes of the Pyrenees. We're looking here into the face of Stéphane Goubert. 39 years of age, Goubert. He's been around for an awful long time, and he's just trying to pace his man, the man who starts the day in the yellow jersey, Rinaldo Nocentini. They mustn't panic like this, because if they try and stay with the attacks that are coming from Schleck and Armstrong and Contador, they will blow up and lose huge chunks of time. If they ride this sensibly, go over the top at 30 seconds or 1 minute behind those leaders, they've got a very good chance of getting back into the race before the finish.
Well, at the moment, they've lost half a minute, and I don't like the look on the face there, or the riding style of the yellow jersey. Somebody better tell Stefan his pace is too high for the maillot jaune. He is in trouble, and he's going to lose over a minute and a half, I reckon, by the top of this climb.
You can't hold that against him, Phil. Yesterday was a long breakaway, a long successful breakaway, and he's still not really been able to recover from the effort. I did also notice in that group was Bryce Feliu, 23 years of age. What a performance by that kid yesterday. First year as a professional, first professional victory, first mountain stage, first Tour de France, first win.
Absolutely. He's lost the lead in the King of the Mountains today, by the way, because Christophe Kermit over the Envolera in second place. He's the current leader on the road. Cassar's been stacking up the points. I don't think he'll get enough, though, to move that jersey across. But this was where we expected the riders to hit each other today. They are well aware that the stage today and tomorrow, the mountains end a long way from the finish, so there is time to recover. But if they get 2 or 3 minutes over the top, you won't be seeing them again today. This would be a big result. And obviously now a change of leader, and the obvious shoulders, Alberto Contador.
Well, the leading group of 4, let's not forget, is still holding on a fairly sensible advantage. It's 1 minute and 27 seconds, and that's because they really are putting their backs into this, and most of the work is being done by the 2 Spanish riders in first and second position. Mikel Astrolosa here in the orange, and Luis Leon Sanchez, a real class act from Case d'Epargne. He's got a very good ability to time trial. Sandy Cassar is riding on sheer guts here, Phil. He really knows that he has to stay in contact with this group. He's been dropped about 3 times, and every time he's clawed his way back into the lead.
He's the rider who won the stage after getting knocked off by Nelson the dog a couple of years ago, and everybody wrote and asked how the dog was and not how poor Sandy Cassar was. But the chase group contains everybody that matters right now. Leipheimer, Van der Velde, Schleck, Contador, Armstrong, Bradley Wiggins we must include now, because he is a challenge, it seems. He's coming through the mountains like a good bike rider, sitting in 5th place overall. Van der Velde, I take my hat off to the American, because he's had such a bad injury only just over 6 weeks ago, and he's now still a challenger in this Tour.
Well, he rode a solid time trial to begin with, but I think in the back of his mind it must have been a question mark as to how he was going to handle the mountains. He handled them very well yesterday on the slopes of the Pyrenees. Just seeing that sign there, Phil, I think it was 1 kilometre to go. Was it 5 kilometres to go to the summit? Well, there's still a long way to the top.
Still a long way to the top. Astrolosa is the rider at the back. So as we're watching these 4 make their way, they must stay together, stay as one unit. 49 kilometres we are now from the finish. We're 4 3/4 kilometres from the summit of the Col d'Agnès. These 4 riders have shaken off everybody now, and Sanchez, if he could get just over 4 minutes, he would be the leader of the Tour de France. But it looks as though the chase is now on. And amongst the riders in that chase group is Bradley Wiggins, who's holding on to 5th place overall. Also Armstrong and Contador. The next obvious leader of the Tour right now will be Alberto Contador, rather, not Lance Armstrong. He'd be second, 2 seconds behind. They're pulling away from the maillot jaune now quite quickly. Well, having said that, Paul, 30 seconds, he's actually holding it at 30 seconds.
Got it locked in, he's not going to panic. He's an experienced professional, Phil, is Rinaldo Nocentini. He's been a professional since 1999. He was very successful in the amateur level of the sport, a silver medalist at the World Championships. He knows that if he can just hold it, get a rhythm and not lose too much, he will take incredible risks on the descent to pull himself back into this race. And if you're a good descender, going downhill fast, you can pull back anything between 1 minute and 1.5 minutes.
Absolutely.
But there, looking into the eyes of the rider with the orange lenses on his glasses, was Bradley Wiggins. And I don't need to introduce Bradley Wiggins at all, because Bradley Wiggins is a 3-time gold medalist at the Olympic Games in 2004 and 2008. And he is absolutely climbing superbly in the Tour de France this year, alongside his teammate there, Christian van der Velde. So it's 1 minute and 25 seconds, and in fact the group of the yellow jersey is starting to eat their way back.
Well, there are the 3 riders, Menchoff, Fletcher, and I'm still missing the 3rd member of Rabobank who is there. But I would say it's Laurens ten Dam, because he's been riding so well. But is it Oscar Freire? That would be an interesting combination if it was. There's the face of the maillot jaune. We say it, if you pull on a yellow jersey, you ride like 2 men. Nocentini is suffering, but at the moment he's hanging on to the gap.
Who's coming back because of the efforts of this man on the front, Stéphane Goubert. We've talked about Stéphane Goubert many times throughout the Tour de France as being one of the older, experienced French professional bike riders. They were at one stage 30 seconds in arrears. Yep. He's now pulled it back, Phil, to 21 seconds. He doesn't need to catch this group before the top of the climb, but if he keeps it between 30 seconds to 1 minute, I predict that he will come back on the descent.
And I am just stunned by the speed these guys are climbing the mountains today. They look as though they're flying up it. We're only just over 3.5 kilometres from the summit now for the 3 leaders. And Nocentini knows, he's saying so, if I can just get over the top, 35, 40 seconds, 45 seconds back, I've got 42 kilometres to catch up with Contador and Armstrong, and I will stay in yellow tonight.